Buckle up, everyone, because today we're diving headfirst into a world that's, well, let's just say it's not exactly sunshine and rainbows.
Definitely more dystopian thriller vibes.
Right. A society that's teetering on the brink of collapse. Crime is rampant. And the justice system, well, let's just say it's seen better days.
It's practically non-existent.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And then into this chaos step, the Angeles de las Rojas, or Angels of Red Wings for those of us who don't speak Spanish.
Talk about a dramatic entrance.
Seriously.
Yeah.
But that's what we're here to unpack today. This whole concept of heroes and villains gets really blurry in this world.
Yeah, you start to question who's really saving who and at what cost.
Exactly. So our source material lays out this incredibly detailed picture of this fractured society. You've got these lawless zones controlled by criminals, and then these so-called safe zones where people are living in constant fear.
It's like the city is holding its breath, waiting for the next disaster to strike.
Yeah, it's a pretty bleak picture. And it's into this environment of desperation that the angels emerge.
And what's so fascinating is the mystery surrounding them. Nobody seems to know who's bankrolling them, where they came from, or what their true agenda is. They just sort of appear out of nowhere.
Like phantoms.
Exactly. Dressed in these stark white uniforms with black stripes, and of course the iconic Red Wing symbol.
Yeah, that's all very dramatic, very visual.
Oh, absolutely.
And their tactics are just as striking. They're not bothering with arrests or trials or any of that. It's all about swift and often lethal action.
They utilize advanced technology drones, high-tech weaponry armored vehicles. It's a full-on assault.
Yeah, they're not messing around. But what's interesting is they seem to be very calculated about protecting innocent civilians.
Right. During their operations, they broadcast this message. It's almost surreal when you consider the context.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
It says, "Ciudadanos honestos, no teman. Hemos venido a limpiar nuestro hogar. Mañana será un mejor día."
Chills. For those who don't speak Spanish, that translates to, honest citizens, do not be afraid. We have come to clean our home. Tomorrow will be a better day.
It's this strange mix of comfort and terror.
Totally. Like they're trying to reassure the public while simultaneously striking fear into the hearts of criminals.
And you know what? It seems to be working. They've got this whole propaganda machine going with graffiti and posters plastered everywhere, slogans like "Por la justicia verdadera," for true justice.
And La purga es la redención. The purge is redemption.
Powerful stuff. It taps into that primal desire for order, especially in a world that feels so out of control.
But it makes you wonder, how long can they maintain order through fear? What happens when the fear subsides?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Do they just keep escalating the violence to maintain control?
It's a slippery slope, and that's where the ethical dilemma really comes into play.
Right. They have this strict code. No harm to innocent citizens, ruthless elimination of criminals, and ensuring the well-being of those who deserve protection.
That's good in theory.
But who gets to decide who's innocent? What about due process? It's a very fine line between vigilante justice and outright tyranny.
And the source material really highlights that tension. It describes these scenes after an angel operation. The city falls silent. Streets are deserted, debris from the fighting is everywhere.
It's like the city itself is traumatized, holding its breath, unsure if the danger has truly passed.
And the people are left to grapple with this uneasy mix of relief and fear.
Is this peace just a temporary reprieve? Or is it the start of something more permanent?
And it's not just the people living in this city who are struggling to understand the angels. The international community is just as divided.
Some countries are condemning them as terrorists. Others view them as a necessary evil, a brutal but effective solution in a world where traditional law enforcement has failed.
It really speaks to the complexity of the situation. There's no easy answer,
Right.
no clear-cut right or wrong, just a whole lot of gray areas.
Absolutely.
And then there's the impact on the social fabric of the city itself. On one hand, you see this increase in community collaboration. People are working together to maintain the peace. But is it genuine unity?
Or just a survival mechanism born out of fear.
Right. Are people truly collaborating or just complying out of fear of becoming the angel's next target? It's a question that's hard to answer.
And then there's the question of justice. The source material mentions families of victims finding some sense of closure, knowing that the perpetrators are gone. But is that really justice? Or is it just revenge masquerading as something more noble?
It's a tough question to wrestle with.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the broader theme of what are we willing to sacrifice in the name of security? Are we willing to compromise our values, our freedoms, our very humanity for the promise of a safer world?
Those are questions that every society has to grapple with. And the source material doesn't shy away from exploring the dark side of that pursuit of security. It makes us confront the uncomfortable truth that sometimes, even with the best of intentions, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
And speaking of good intentions, our source material introduces another layer of complexity to this whole equation.
Yes, the Federation Rajgartha.
With their Programa de Seguridad Doméstica, or Domestic Security Program,
They're taking a totally different approach to achieving security, one that relies heavily on technology and artificial intelligence.
it's almost like they're trying to create a perfectly controlled environment where every potential threat is identified and neutralized before it can even materialize.
And at the heart of this program is Valkyria.
They're all seeing AI.
It's constantly monitoring citizens feeding data into this central hub.
It's fascinating and a little terrifying at the same time. The
Yeah.
Federation claims that this technology is designed to respect privacy. But how can you guarantee that?
Right. Where do you draw the line between security and privacy? How much control are we willing to give up in exchange for the promise of safety?
And what happens when those in power abuse that control?
It's a question that's becoming more and more relevant in our own world.
Absolutely. And it's something that we'll be exploring further as we delve deeper into this world and the clash between the Angelus and the Federation. But that's a conversation for another time.
Stay tuned. It's like we're watching two completely different approaches to security play out in this world.
Yeah, it's like a head-on collision between brute force and technological control.
Exactly. And what makes it even more volatile is that you've got these resistance movements popping up within the Federation, people pushing back against the Programa de Seguridad Doméstica and that ever-present eye of Valkyria.
Yeah, it's easy to see why they might be drawn to the Angels' approach, at least on the surface.
Right. The Angels represent this direct challenge to the systems that the Federation is trying so hard to control. They're a symbol of rebellion, a big screw you to the surveillance state.
And can you imagine what happens when these two forces actually clash?
Oh, it's going to be explosive.
On one side, you've got the Angels operating outside the law, striking with surgical precision. And on the other side, you've got the Federation with all its advanced tech and its vast network of surveillance. It's a recipe for disaster.
It's like a high-stakes chess match, but with real lives on the line.
And caught in the middle are the citizens, forced to choose a side or try to carve out their own path in this increasingly dangerous world.
It makes you wonder, what would you do in that situation? Would you embrace the brutal efficiency of the Angels? Or submit to the watchful eye of the Federation?
Or is there a third option?
Yeah.
Some way to navigate this mess without compromising your values?
Tough questions. And the source material shows us how different people are reacting to this pressure cooker of a situation. You've got the criminal organizations adapting to the Angels' tactics, forming alliances, even utilizing their own technology to fight back.
It's like a constant arms race. The rules of the game have changed and everyone's scrambling to keep up.
Exactly. Survival of the fittest.
And what happens if the criminals actually win?
Hmm.
If they manage to outmaneuver the Angels, does the city just descend back into chaos?
It's a terrifying thought that the very force that was meant to bring order could actually end up creating more chaos.
And then you've got the growing unease among some citizens about the Angels' methods. The source material talks about whispers of dissent, fears that the Angels' unchecked power could lead to something even worse.
Right. Like, who watches the watchmen? If the Angels are judge, jury, and executioner, all rolled into one who holds them accountable, who makes sure they don't become the very thing they're fighting against?
It's a classic dilemma, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it makes you think about the compromises we make in the name of security. Are we really willing to give up due process, the right to a fair trial, all of that, just to get rid of the bad guys?
It's a dangerous game. And once you start down that path, it's hard to turn back.
It reminds me of that quote by Benjamin Franklin: "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." Sobering words.
Absolutely. It highlights the idea that true security can't exist without freedom, and that chasing one at the expense of the other is ultimately a recipe for disaster.
And what's so brilliant about the source material is that it doesn't offer easy answers to these questions. It just throws you headfirst into this messy world where the lines between right and wrong are constantly shifting.
Yeah, it makes you really think.
And then you got the journalist who's trying to uncover the truth about the Angels. Who are they really? Where did they come from? What's their end game?
I love that element of the story. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, and you just know that the truth is going to be explosive.
I'm on the edge of my seat. And the source material also hints at how the rest of the world is reacting to the Angels and the Federation. Some are tempted to follow their lead. Others are horrified by their methods.
It's like watching a global domino effect.
Yeah, the actions of these two forces are having ripple effects across the entire world. And it makes you wonder, which approach will ultimately prevail? Will it be the Angels' brand of vigilante justice, or the Federation's model of technological control?
It's a scary thought, isn't it? That this dystopian world could become a blueprint for our own future. But maybe there's another way, a third option that we haven't even considered yet.
Maybe. But that's a conversation for the final part of our deep dive.
Stay with us.
It feels like we've gone down a rabbit hole, haven't we? Exploring this world where society is caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, it's like picking your poison. Brutal vigilante justice or a life under constant surveillance. Neither option is exactly appealing.
Not really. But what I find fascinating is that the source material doesn't give us a neat and tidy resolution. It lays out these different potential outcomes, and it's like the author is saying, okay, now you figure out what you think is the best way forward.
It's not about providing answers, it's about making you think, forcing you to confront the fact that in the real world, there are rarely easy solutions.
Right. And it's not just a simple good versus evil situation either.
No, not at all.
The source material hints at corruption within both the Angelus and the Federation. Like no matter who's in charge, power can corrupt.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that we always need to be questioning those in power, holding them accountable. No matter what system of government or authority we're talking about, blind faith is never a good thing.
So one of the potential outcomes that the source material explores is the spread of the Angelus model. Imagine a world where vigilante justice becomes the norm. It's a scary thought.
It's like stepping into a world of constant chaos and violence. Every faction fighting for control, justifying their actions in the name of justice or security. It's a never-ending cycle.
And yet I can understand the appeal, especially when traditional systems of justice have failed. When you've been victimized, when you feel like the institutions meant to protect you have let you down, that desire for swift and decisive action can be overwhelming.
Oh, absolutely. It's a primal instinct, an eye for an eye. And the source material really taps into that raw emotion. It makes us question our own beliefs, our own sense of justice.
Another potential outcome is the dominance of the Federation's approach. A world of total surveillance where algorithms determine your every move. It's like something out of a science fiction nightmare.
The panopticon come to life. Every word you speak, every step you take, monitored and analyzed. It's chilling.
And the scariest part is that people might not even realize they're living in a digital cage. They might even come to accept it as the price of safety.
It's like the frog in boiling water. The control creeps up on you so slowly that you don't even notice until it's too late, and by then you're trapped.
But what gives me hope is that the source material doesn't just leave us with those two bleak options. It also shows us individuals and groups who are resisting both the brutality of the Angelus and the control of the Federation. They're fighting for a better way, a world that balances security and freedom. It's a long shot, but they're out there. And that's what keeps me going.
Yeah, those characters are like glimmers of hope in an otherwise pretty dark story. They remind us that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the fight for freedom for a better future is always worth it.
So I guess it all comes down to this question. Is absolute security worth giving up our freedom?
It's the ultimate dilemma. And honestly, there's no easy answer. It's something each of us has to grapple with.
But by exploring these ideas, by diving into these fictional worlds, I think we can gain a better understanding of the choices we face in our own lives, in our own society.
Yeah.
And maybe, just maybe, we can avoid making the same mistakes.
Exactly. It's all about learning from the past and present so we can build a better future.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this. What kind of world do you want to live in? What are you willing to fight for? The answers to those questions, well, they lie within each and every one of us. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay free.